In the middle of an epic and climactic story from this week's Parsha, we find a unique and almost out-of-place halacha. In this week's Parsha, we read about how Yaakov prepares for his encounter with Esav, and after ferrying his family across the stream, he remains alone, where according to the Gemara, Yaakov returns for just some small jars. And as Yaakov stands alone, we find the epic struggle between Yaakov and the angel, where Yaakov emerges victorious despite walking away with a limp. Mind you, a relative scratch compared to the type of potential mortal injuries that one could sustain while wrestling with, as the Medrash identifies, a divine being. And after the battle, the Torah commands, Al kain lo yochlu b'nei Yisrael gid hanasha, that therefore the people of Israel, they shall not eat the gid hanasha, the sinew of the vein, which is in the hollow of the thigh to this day, because ki naga b'kaf yerech Yaakov b'gid hanasha, because this man, this angel, touched the hollow of Yaakov's thigh and the sinew of the vein. And the majority of the commentators suggest that this prohibition is directly linked to the injury sustained by Yaakov in the battle. And so by not eating from this gid hanasha, we recall the miraculous way in which Yaakov was saved by Hashem and emerged victorious in his wrestling match. And yet what is most strange is that we would have expected the Torah to commemorate this joyous occasion, this moment when Yaakov was victorious. We would have expected the Torah to commemorate it through a celebratory meal of Thanksgiving, or maybe an annual holiday of happiness. And yet instead we see the Torah immediately shift its focus to a legal ban. You see, usually mitzvos to commemorate miracles are mitzvos aseh, when we do something active to commemorate the miracle. And so why does the Torah focus on a punitive prohibition against eating instead of focusing on the joy of the moment? And so I want to share with you a different interpretation of this entire story from the Chizkuni. The Chizkuni writes that what we are commemorating here is the sad fact that Yaakov was in fact alone, that he was separated from his 11 children. You see, the Bnei Israel, they were being punished from eating the sciatic nerve because they left Yaakov alone. And while they were brave and while they were strong, it would have behooved them to wait for their father and to help him. And they didn't properly escort him. And he was therefore injured as a result of their own negligence. And so what the Chizkuni is suggesting is that the prohibition of eating the gid hanasha was necessary such that the Jewish people would always remember this, and that they would be more diligent in the commandment of escorting loved ones. And so our avoidance of this vein where Yaakov was struck, it needs to remind us of the importance of never leaving people to be by themselves, especially loved ones and especially the elderly. The Hebrew term gid hanasha, it means the vein which was dislocated. In other words, Yaakov, who was dislocated from the rest of his family. And amazingly, a few verses later, we see the exact same phenomenon once again. In the very next chapter, we see that Esav leaves after this encounter with Yaakov, and on that pasuk, Rashi comments that the Torah is emphasizing to us in this pasuk that Esav leaves alone. He doesn't leave with any of the 400 men that showed up with him in the beginning. That 400-person entourage left Esav one by one. And not only does this speak to the complete lack of respect and the love that these men had for their leader Esav, but it's tragic and also sad, and that despite all of Esav's might, all of his power, in the end, he ends up alone. And in so many ways, this idea is what it means to be a part of a community, to feel supported and loved, and most importantly, to not feel alone. It's this idea that is the bedrock and the foundation of what Baron Hirsch is all about, from our adult education programs, to our family and youth programs, to our daily and weekly Shabbat davening, and so much more. They're all about building community and building connection between our members. And as we all know, we have never been challenged quite like this during this pandemic to help people feel connected and to ensure that no one feels alone. And Baruch Hashem, we're answering the call. We have worked hard to reach out and to do chesed and to drop off special holiday packages and more. And yet, despite all of the incredible things that we have done these last few months, there is still so much more to do to ensure that no one in our community, heaven forbid, ever feels alone. And for that reason, we need to double down, especially as it's getting colder outside and as the surge of cases rages on. We need to continue to put the effort in to reach out and to connect with members of our community, even if it means pushing ourselves out of our own comfort zones. It means calling someone on behalf of the shul that maybe you never even met before or never even spoke to before. It means maybe volunteering to drop off packages when we do a delivery. And frankly, there are just so many opportunities to make a difference, and the truth is they barely cost anything. The mitzvah of giving the gift of time to others, of saying hello, of smiling with your eyes behind your mask, or calling people to let them know that you're thinking of them, all of that is the theme of this week's Parsha. And so may we each learn the lesson of the Git Hanasha, of leaving Yaakov alone, such that we escort our loved ones, such that we look after our friends and our family as we build a strong and friendly community together. Shabbat Shalom.